Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of your hometown friend, the Bank of St. Elizabeth podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have Brice Luetkemeyer, President and CEO of the Bank of St. Elizabeth. Brice, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We have an exciting show today. We want to talk about the history of the Bank of St. Elizabeth. But I wanted to start with, Brice, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised here in St. Elizabeth, and my dad was the banker in town growing up, but he came off the farm, and he had owned a small farm outside of town, and we raised hogs and cattle. Got my brother and I to get it fully engaged in that, and that's how we paid for college and our first couple of cars. There was plenty of money to be had in farming at that time, and so that's where we started.
So banking and farming was the...
Banking and farming that was where it's at. And being with Dad, being in the bank, we heard a lot about banking, at the dinner table.
So, did you always know from a young age that you were going to be or wanted to be in banking, or was there another point in your life where, you kind of wanted to veer into a different path, or was that always just an interest because it was the family business?
No, I really wasn't set on that until once I reached, was in the college years. Growing up, I loved math. I loved solving problems, and I majored in college. I majored in business, finance, and general management. And then, as the last 2 years of college, I was a teller. Worked as a teller at Mary's Home and also at St. Elizabeth, and learned some of the ropes and got used to exactly what it was all about. And but those majors, I got that second major in management because I felt like, if I didn't go back to the bank, that I would then have some background that there was all this clamor that there was, business was where it was at that time, that I would have some college classes that would lend itself to other things besides just banking.
So what college did you go to?
Went to Central Missouri State in Warrensburg.
Let's see, and you said you got your degree in business.
In finance and general management.
Okay.
Yes.
So when did you... was that the turning point when you started, working as a teller, that you kind of thought, this is what I'm going to get into?
Yes and no. I felt comfortable with that, and I thought it was really a neat thing to have that human interaction and deal with people that you knew and could help them on a daily basis and get paid for it. It was a job. Have fun and have a job, get paid at the same time. It's sort of like playing baseball. That was just my love in sports, and that was my first pick. So banking was my second one. Okay, so no, it was got out of college and there wasn't really a place for me at the bank. My brother had come back from examining. He was a bank examiner for the state, and so I looked at that as an avenue, and I got on with the Division of Finance with the state of Missouri and became a bank examiner and spent 10 years being a bank examiner, and which was really, as I look back on it, was transformative and educational to the point of going through the early 80s with all the bank failures and the recession then. I was able to learn multitudes about banks and what's important and what's not important, or as important. So I was able to learn banking from other people's mistakes, in other words, and saw how approximately 200 other banks ran their business, which is kind of unique, kind of different. So
you can look at their successes and failures, and as far as guiding something, you can
see it hands-on without being responsible really
Sure.
for it. So it was just an incredible learning experience.
Can you go over? Can you kind of tell us where it all began with the Bank of St. Elizabeth? If you wouldn't mind giving us just like a brief history of the bank itself.
Yeah, it was in the fall and winter of 1913. Some of the townspeople came together and got together and actually the person that organized the meeting was my great-grandfather. It was John Schwederman, and he formed the meeting, got the meeting together, and there was considerable interest. And there was 50-some original shareholders that threw money in the pot to say, yes, we wanted this to happen, and we want you to lead that. So he became chairman of the board, never actually worked in the bank, but was chairman of the board for about 50 years. Was on the board. And the bank became a reality. And so there were several other employees. For the most part, it was a two-person shop for almost 30 years, 40 years, until it started to grow a little more. And then my dad got into the bank, or his uncle was came in the bank in the late 30s and became ill. And before Dad went to the service in World War II, he started working the bank. His uncle felt the need because of his physical condition that he wasn't going to be able to be there full time. But Dad went to World War II then and served almost 4 years. And when he came back, the uncle was worse and actually left the bank within just a few months after that. And Dad became the CEO then and had one other teller bookkeeper. So there was a two-person shop. And stayed in the bank, worked in the bank for a total of 66 years. Actually worked in the bank 66 years. So, and he worked in the bank until he passed away in 2010. I came to the bank in 1984. 74, I'm sorry. No, 84. Been here 31 years. So that was when things were growing and they needed some help. And I had 10 years in at the division and felt like I'd gotten married and had kids, and it was time to come back and get off the road, quit traveling or a good part of the state. So came back and been here since.
What was it like working for Dad?
It was like any. It was like most relationships between a boss and an employee, but at the same time there was that you couldn't always separate the father and son thing, so there's just different expectations regardless of how hard you have it when it's father son or a close family member. So. We worked together well, though. I mean, in the end, he would say, well, we've been doing this way for 50 years, and it's been working, so why should we change? So we'd always laugh about it and go, okay, fine, and move on. So, but, no, it was good. It was good, and I really appreciated all that. He was an amazing person. There was so much that knowledge of not only the community, but the people and the families. I sat with him for several months on and off, trying to learn people and learn their background and their history, and he had it all in his head. He would sit there and someone come in and want a loan or talk about a loan, and after they'd leave, he'd talk to me about that person, and he would know what they have done since they've been a little kid. He would know their parents. He would know where they're from. He'd know who they married, what house or farm they bought, and just know the whole family history of virtually everybody in town. I mean, it was truly incredible. I've never seen anybody have that kind of in-depth knowledge about so many people. I can't begin to match that kind of knowledge retention. It's just incredible.
I was going to ask, it seems like everybody has that, at least one unique quality about them or, ability. And it sounds like his was just retaining information about the customers that would come to the bank, the people in the town.
He had a couple more too. He had one was patience. I was young and a little on the brash side probably, and I wanted change. I'd been in these 200 other banks, and I knew there were other ways to do things that maybe could be more efficient or more effective, or just a better way I thought of doing things. And he would listen, but at the same time, he was he had patience not only with me but with everybody else, with customers. He was always given the nth degree of benefit of the doubt, and again, that goes partly from knowing him so well, too. Again, going back to knowing everybody so well and understanding where they're from, what they're doing, their business, their background, as well as their personal history.
So back to the, we've been doing it this way for 50 years.
Yeah.
It's worked. Was that difficult, being that the banking industry seems to be constantly changing as far as products and, strategies and the way things are done and technology? And is that hard? I mean, is it hard to follow that same, viewpoint that it's been successful for us?
Sure.
But in a emerging market like this, it's just constantly changing. How do you balance the two of those?
Well, back then when I first came here, you have to realize that was over 30 years ago, and at that point, things weren't changing like they are today. So it was just that some banks did it a little differently. They did their books this way or a little differently, or they handled this, this paperwork a little differently, and how they booked it and how they processed it was all just a little different.
And you were seeing banks of different sizes. I mean, you were seeing large banks, small banks. So
yes, we were seeing. Yes, I went into some really, really big banks and all the way down to the smallest community banks up in northern Missouri, and of all sizes, of all backgrounds. A great deal of them were agricultural banks, but of all sizes. But no, it's one of the things that we friendly disagreed on changing things sometimes, but I have found, and I preach that today, that things are moving so quickly, especially with technology and the way people view things and the expectations of customers and people in general. And I preach that today to the staff, that if we don't change, we don't want to change just for the sake of change, but if we don't change things that with people's expectations, then we're going to be left behind. Now, that doesn't mean we have to be the cutting technology. We don't have to be the newest thing on the block all the time. But if we don't change, if we don't keep up, and we don't stay ahead of the game a little bit, then people are going to feel like that they're not getting their expectations met. And that's the key to success in business today is to meet or exceed customers' expectations. So we can't always do that, but that's what we strive to do. We strive to do that all the time, and it's worked well. I mean, it's amazing how many of our new customers are referrals. People that have talked to other customers and they have said, "Well, you need to talk to the people over there at the Bank of St. Elizabeth." So, and we do.
Leads me to my second to last question, which is, what does the future hold for the Bank of St. Elizabeth?
Change. I think we want to continue to hold on to the values, the experience that we try to provide to our customers and our community. We still feel like we are attached to the communities where we sit. and that's really important. But we have to change. We have to, again, meet those changing expectations of people as technology changes, as we look at doing things differently, we shop differently. The cybersecurity is a huge thing, that people are inconvenienced because they're when they go to the store, that the store's cybersecurity is not great enough, and then their card gets compromised. So we have to be able to contact and replace it and explain that to them, that it wasn't anything we did, but we're going to try and do our best to minimize the inconvenience to you. So and how do we deliver that service? We want to continue to be there for our customers, and we don't want to change that. We just want to keep tweaking our the way we do business to meet those any changing expectations.
Brice, thank you so much for joining us today and talking a little bit about the bank, about yourself. Closing question. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I think there's always a closing thought. I know Steve he talked about baseball, and I'm not going to talk about baseball, even though it's the paramount sports, sporting activity. But I just I think back to we need to, as a bank, as staff, remember that we're always dealing with people, and people have every situation is a little different, and that's why we have to be flexible in meeting the expectations of the customer, because every customer's expectation is a little different. Their needs are different, their problems are different, their situations are different. So, and that's one of the advantages that we have as being a smaller bank. I think we are a little more flexible than some of the big banks, especially in the lending area, where they don't. Sometimes you don't fit in a box. They reject you, or they don't try and work with your situation particularly. So again, I think we're a little bit of all the best of all worlds. That we still understand that we're dealing with people. That it's our community. Customers are from our communities in Central Missouri here. So all of these small communities we attach to.
Well, that concludes today's episode of your hometown friend, the Bank of St. Elizabeth podcast. Big thank you to Brice Luetkemeyer, the Bank of St. Elizabeth, for talking with us today on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Please stay tuned to the Bank of St. Elizabeth Facebook page, Instagram, and our website for future episodes. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap.